welcome back. In this video I'm going to start going over the German special rules, and in this video particular I'm going to go over some Stormtrooper move, about Kampfgruppe, mission tactics, and Reich Divided. I'm going to do armored infantry in its own video, and then for the last video I'm going to do about Tiger Race skills, a couple of tank special rules, and their German's special artillery rules. So that's the plan I have for the German special rules videos. So let's start off with Stormtrooper moves. So basically, any platoon, unless it specifically states otherwise, any German platoon can do what's called a Stormtrooper move in the assault step. And so that could be like a tank platoon, a gun platoon, infantry, and so on. As long as there's not a special rule that says it can't do a Stormtrooper move. And there are a few of those. Some of those, like the civilian types, Volksgrenadier or something like that, a lot of those can't do the Stormtrooper move. Now, what you need to do a Stormtrooper move, and again in the assault step, is you take a skill test. So we're going to say that these are trained. And it's not roll once and then everybody failed, so nobody gets to go. No, you roll it for each individual platoon. So roll for this one, success, success, and I am awesome today, success. But let's say this one failed. So this would get to do Stormtrooper move, they would get to do a Stormtrooper move, they would not. And what a Stormtrooper move is basically the same distance you would move for an assault. In an assault, you normally can move up to 4 inches. Well, it's the same with them. They want to do a Stormtrooper move, instead of assaulting, they're just going to move 4 inches. Course, if they're going to do the Stormtrooper move, they cannot assault. So it's one or the other. So if you assault, no Stormtrooper move. If you do a Stormtrooper move, no assaulting. Now, you will have to make any bogging checks as usual for these. That includes if this one is in like the forest or something like that, and it has to move. If it moves, it's going to have to take a bogging check. Even if you just want to turn your turret, you still will have to take a bogging check. Even though you only moved your turret, the way they kind of explain it in the rules is you're still kind of have to maneuver a little bit, so you might become bogged down. So be careful of that. So if you do a Stormtrooper move and a bogging check is required, even if you just rotate your turret, you will have to do a bogging check. Now, there are certain situations that you can't do a Stormtrooper move. So let me get these out and I will go over those situations. So one of the ways that they can't do it, so let's say, actually I'm just going to keep tanks out here. This works for any platoon. It's just going to be easier for me to move a tank around. So this tank moved at the double. If you move at the double, no Stormtrooper move. Alright, this tank got shot at. Wasn't destroyed, but it got bailed out. Can't do a Stormtrooper move. And it came up to the shrub here, had to do a bogging check. Failed, became bogged down. Let's see if I can roll that. 1 in 6 chance, and 5, so no. So it became bogged down. Can't do a Stormtrooper move. The last one will not affect these because it's fully armored, but will affect infantry, and that is if you are pinned down. And remember, fully armored vehicles ignore pinned down, so even if they're pinned down, they can still do a Stormtrooper move. Another way you can't do a Stormtrooper move, and this is kind of an interesting one, is Recon has the eyes and ears. So let's say this is the Recon platoon, and somehow they've gone to ground, and they're trying to pull these guys. Actually, it would be better if I picked some infantry up, wouldn't it? So let's say these Americans are over here, and these Americans are dug in and gone to ground. And so this Recon here wants to pull that gun to ground from them. There's 3 of them. They decide, they're trained, so it's going to take 4 plus. So the German player doesn't want to take a chance of really flubbing it. Really needs that gun to ground gone on these guys. And, good thing, because only 1 success. That means that gun to ground is done. Since they pulled that gun to ground, they cannot do a Stormtrooper move. So that's one that could be a little tricky to remember about. Did you try to do the eyes and ears to pull that gun to ground? If they did, no Stormtrooper move for them. Now, of course, if this gun was immobile and the only way it can be moved around is by a transport vehicle, of course, it cannot do a Stormtrooper move. If it's immobile, it's immobile. It's not going to move during a Stormtrooper move. And also, any gun team, so we'll just throw this out here, and that could be any gun teams that shot earlier will not get to do a Stormtrooper move. Because these are not easy to pick up, unlike a rifle. That's easy, they just carry it with them. This takes some time to maneuver and move and pack up everything. So if they shot, they're too busy to try to do a Stormtrooper move. So if they shot, just remember gun teams, and that would mean, because it didn't say differently, that would mean your man-packed gun teams also. So if your man-packed gun teams or these gun teams, because man-packed gun teams are a gun team, if they shot, no Stormtrooper move. And of course, any trains, which I've never ran into a train yet. I want to play against one sometime. So a train. Now, there is one little special thing that I will go into, and that is the transport. If they make their Stormtrooper roll, and I failed, there it is. These guys can jump out and do a 4-inch move. So they can dismount during the assault step. Remember, but they can't assault. But they can dismount during the assault step and move 4 inches. And also, Germany with all their little special rules, these guys can also mount the vehicle during their Stormtrooper move. Now, one thing I will also say, if they are pinned down, they can still unlimber the vehicle, or that can still become, just like the guys can dismount, they can unlimber the gun that they were towing during the Stormtrooper move. So that's all I have for a Stormtrooper move. It's pretty simple. Just if they're a gun team and shot, if they're bailed out or bogged down, moved at the double, pinned down unless you're fully armored. All those little rules, you can't do a Stormtrooper move. Otherwise, mount, dismount, move 4 inches, just don't assault. Okay, now we're going to move to Kampfgruppe. Alright, with Kampfgruppe, this has to do with the second in command. So I'm going to throw the second in command out there. Basically what's going to happen is this second in command is going to become another platoon for the German team. So if you only have a company commander in the company, company commander, such as this one. So if you only have a company commander, you can't do this. This does require a second in command. So what can you do with the second in command? Well, before the game begins, and before you do any combat attachments that your HQ section may have, you can take teams from combat and weapons platoons that you have purchased for your army. So in this case, how you find if they're combat or weapon platoons is, it'll say here, this is a combat platoons, these are weapon platoons, and then these are support. So you can't do it with these, not with support, but with combat and weapon platoons. Also, if they are allied platoons, you cannot do it with allied platoons. So Germany, be careful with the allied platoon stuff. So if I bought these 2 infantry and I bought a machine gun and this reconnaissance, I can start pulling people from that and throw them in with my second in command and make a whole new platoon. Now there are a few rules. You can't take the platoon commander from like this infantry squad and throw him up with the second in command. He's still going to be here leading the men that are left, because you're going to have to leave some behind. So you can't pluck out that platoon commander, throw him up with the second in command here. He's going to have to stay behind. But you can pick some of the men that are with him. And you can even, if this had tanks here, you can even pull, so think there's a tank company, you could pull some of those tanks and throw it with the second in command. Then you have a whole nother platoon with tanks in it. So what you have to do is, if you're pulling tanks out from your combat platoons or weapons platoon, you have to leave at least 2 of those teams, 2 tank teams. You can take as many as you want, you just got to leave those 2. So if there's 5 in there, you can take 3 of them, throw 3 in here, leave 2 behind. If there are any other type of teams, like gun teams, infantry teams, stuff like that, you have to leave 3. So in this case, if I was pulling from here, I'd have to leave at least 3 infantry teams with that platoon commander, but then I could take the rest of them and throw them up here. And I could take from this one too and throw them in with the second in command. And since I added them to this platoon, they are no longer part of their original platoon. They're taken out, they're done, they're now part of this platoon. They don't count for anything towards these 2 platoons, whichever platoons you took them out of. Because it's a whole new platoon you're creating with this second in command. If they have any transports that is part of them, so, I'm going to take these infantry and throw them, I'm pulling them out of that one group, and they have a dedicated transport. They have a transport that they go with. The transport goes with them. I can't leave this transport with that original platoon. So if this transport carries them guys around, when I pull these guys into this Kampfgruppe, the transport goes with them. Now I will also say that, say this transport carries them, but also carries this mortar. But I'm not bringing the mortar team with me into this. I'm going to leave it in that original platoon. So this all came from, let's pretend, this platoon here, and I decided, I don't want the mortar to go to the second in command, but I do want them. And they both use this same transport. This transport has to go with them. I can't leave it behind for them. So if I take anybody that uses a transport, that transport goes with them and does not stay in the original platoon. Now let's say I bought this Volksgrenadier company, and this is from the Nuts book, and I decided I want to buy this anti-tank squad, so I'm going to have those 3 Panzerschreck teams. Now I can attach those out as usual, but also I can take them and throw them in with the second in command. So I can decide, do I want them to go with the second in command, or do I want to distribute those out to some other platoons as usual for combat attachments? And I don't have to leave behind, remember when it was like 3, when it was like any other team, like infantry or something like that, I could take them all. Or I could take 1, I can take 2, or I can take them all, or I can take none and combat attach those guys out. Now, if I'm playing a fortified company and I do that combat attachment, anybody attached to this is no longer considered fortified. And they can't bring any of their fortifications with them, like the bunkers and all that, trenches on. It doesn't come with them when you make this Kampfgruppe. Those will still stay behind with the original platoon. And also, which can happen in a lot of German armies, especially late war, because they're really struggling to get people to fill up their force. If, let's say, these guys are veterans, and what they attach to them are conscript, you go with the worst rating, conscript. If you get some stuff mixed in there, veteran, trained conscript, conscript. You go with the worst rating as far as that goes, as skill. And also for motivation. So whatever the worst rating for skill, you take it. Whatever the worst rating for motivation, you have to use that for what this platoon's ability is. Well, that's all I got for Kampfgruppe. We're going to go on to mission tactics. All right, the next rule with mission tactics is it's a pretty simple rule. So we're going to say we got this platoon here, and they got hit 4 times. So of course they had to allocate out to every one of these, and they get their 3+ save. So made it, failed. They lost their commander. Normally, you would have to wait till your first in command comes up there and out and says, "You are now the leader." Well, with mission tactics, what you can do is, and I'm going to mark where this guy died. So that's where the platoon commander died, and normally this guy, they would be leaderless, so they can't move or anything. But Germany says, no. You can, if they're within command, you can say, this is the new leader. You immediately replace it with the command team. He gets killed again. Which one of these do you want to be the new leader? Now, let's say these guys were like this. I'm going to stretch these out a little bit. And it's just these 3 guys. They're all in command. Whoops, you can't see that one. They're all in command. This one gets... Let's see if I can do this again, because I got really lucky on the last one. So, made it. Died. Good, that's what I wanted. Oh, I wanted this one to live. So, this one died. Now, they have to make their save. They failed. That was clear up here. They're not in command of them. I cannot replace it. So it has to be where this guy died. Somebody has to be in command distance of that location to be able to replace him. And it's the same for tanks. If a tank your commander and your tank gets destroyed, go ahead. Let's say got this. Go ahead and designate another tank within command distance to be the new one. So normally it's like your dude there, so you would just kind of do like that. So it's the same with tanks. So that's really what mission tactics does. Now there is a little bit of a twist, because you can have, and I'm going to have to get my famous Audie Murphy for this one. So here we go. We've got this platoon here that's been moving along, and then a warrior. I'm going to use my Audie Murphy for this. This warrior joins them. So the warrior is going to be leading them. He is no longer leading right now while he's joined with them. And they get hit, and they have to make their save, and oh, fail. Oh my gosh. Fail. They live. Well, is he within command of where that platoon leader was? Yes. So he gets replaced. Even though he's leading, it's just temporary. He's not the normal platoon commander. This was the normal platoon commander, and it can still happen. Now, if he gets killed, you can't replace a warrior. So if he gets killed, there's none of this replacing with the warrior. So do be careful if a warrior is your platoon commander. If he dies, You don't get to do that special rule, only with just the normal platoon commanders. Alright, so that's it with mission tactics. Remember, that works with everybody. Gun teams, tank teams, all those. If the leader gets killed, somebody else is in command distance, you just replace the model with the other one. Okay, now I'm going to go to Reich Divided. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to throw some things out here, because this is more, I'm just going to be talking and explaining some stuff, because there's really not any models to show for this. We're just Reich Divided. Basically, here, Luftwaffe and SS are treated as allies for Germany. It sounds like they would be the same army, but Germany had different divisions and some of them didn't get along. So just here, Luftwaffe and I think that's how you say it, Luftwaffe and SS are treated as allies to each other. Fallschirmjager are part of the Luftwaffe, so are not allies to them. So Fallschirmjager, however you say it in Luftwaffe, I'm not German, so I can't really speak too much to this. Gosh, I'm getting worse. Okay, Fallschirmjager and Luftwaffe are not allies. They can do whatever they want with each other. They'll get along. But they are allies to Heer and SS. And this is on page 242, and I'd say just look at that. Because trying to explain that this is like a big long list. It's just going to be easier for you to look at that. And it's just one little paragraph, but it's going to be better if you look at it. Again, that's on page 242. Now, what does allies do for you? Basically, warriors and independent teams will not voluntarily join an allied platoon. Now, if they get shot at, they'll join that platoon to save their butt. But voluntarily joining, like to go into an assault, they're not going to do that if they're an ally. And normally, they cannot spot for each other. So allies normally will not spot for each other. However, Germans will spot for each other for artillery bombardments regardless. So SS, even if they were allies with Heer, H-E-E-R, they'll spot for each other for artillery. But the warriors will not join voluntarily with each other. So that's really what Reich Divided is. Well, that's all I got for this video. Next one, I'm going to talk about mounted or armored infantry with their mounted assault, which I think deserves its own video because it can get a little complicated. And it's a nice rule too. So that's all I'm going to do on this one. So until next time, have a good game.